The United States is stepping up for a war with Iran, it seems, even as it prepares for fresh nuclear talks with Tehran. After weeks of the escalating rhetoric, Washington and Tehran are now set to meet later this week. But on the ground and at sea, tensions have been rising fast. The U.S. Navy is expanding its presence in the region. Warships and fighter jets are being deployed. Missile defense production is being ramped up. All of this, even as President Trump says he prefers diplomacy over war. But then is the region moving towards dialogue, or is it drifting towards war, remains the question. Let's just start off with the latest developments. A U.S. fighter jet shot down an Iranian drone in West Asian waters. The Pentagon saying the drone was approaching an American aircraft carrier and was brought down in self-defense. And this incident came just hours after Iranian forces attempted to detain a U.S.-flagged tanker in the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical oil routes. American warships intervened and escorted the vessel to safety. 2 flashpoints in a single day, underlining just how fragile the situation has become now. And despite these clashes, both sides insisting that the talks are still on track. The U.S. envoy, Steve Witkoff, is expected to meet the Iranian officials later this week. But the conditions are also clear. President Trump, remember, has warned of serious consequences if negotiations fail, even as he says he does not want war. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian says talks will happen only if they are free of threats and pressure. In other words, diplomacy is also on edge. Meanwhile, Washington is reinforcing its military footprint. The aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln entered the region along with guided missile destroyers. The Pentagon has also deployed fighter jets, air defense systems. In fact, Trump has described the deployment as an armada meant to deter Iran and protect U.S. interests, and officials are saying the buildup is defensive. But similar deployments preceded last year's strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities during the 12-day war in June. So that, again, is significant. And which is why alarm bells have been ringing across the region. The reason for this standoff is Iran's nuclear program. The U.S. says it is aimed at building nuclear weapons, but Iran is insisting it is for civilian research. Washington also wants Iran to curb its missile program and its support for proxy groups. Tehran rejects those demands, saying negotiations must focus only on nuclear issues. Israel, meanwhile, remains deeply skeptical. Prime Minister Netanyahu has warned that Iran cannot be trusted. Adding to the pressure is Iran's internal crisis. Months of anti-government protests were met with a deadly crackdown. Rights groups are saying thousands were killed, tens of thousands arrested. Iranian authorities, meanwhile, blame foreign interference, including the United States and Israel. These domestic tensions have further strained the ties with Washington. Earlier, Trump had warned of direct U.S. involvement in Iran over Tehran's crackdown on the protesters. With tensions continuing to escalate with Iran, America is also dramatically increasing the production of missile defense systems, specifically the THAAD interceptors. Arms maker Lockheed Martin has announced plans to boost output more than 4-fold, from under 100 missiles a year to about 400. This move is basically aimed at countering the threats from not only Iran, but also China and Russia. And experts are warning even that may not be enough. You see, during last year's Iran-Israel conflict, the U.S. forces reportedly fired around 150 THAAD interceptors in just 12 days. And that exceeded annual production. Replenishing stocks could take years. And building new factories and supply chains means full-scale production may not be reached until around 2030. The Pentagon is also expanding production of Patriot missiles and naval SM-6 interceptors. At the same time, it is developing cheaper alternatives like an anti-missile system, though it's still in early stages. The message, though, is absolutely clear at this point. Washington is preparing for the absolute worst. even as it hopes for the best, it seems. Of course, diplomacy is moving forward, but then so are the warships, the fighter jets, and the missile factories. The risk now is miscalculation. One wrong move and the entire region could be pushed into an open conflict. As the talks approach, the question still is, will dialogue prevail or will the drums of war grow louder?
To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.